I think that goes to our next topic too, which is topic number 3, is that the NCAA tournament overall, we had the hiccups with the women's basketball issue with the weight room. You had the game canceled in the first round, which was VCU versus Baylor. But ever since then, the tournament went really well, I thought. I do want to, as much as we criticize the NCAA for what happened with the women's inequality at the very beginning, I thought both tournaments, just good games, and maybe it's because we missed it so much from not having it last year, but just the gameplay, the student athletes, the coaching, the rivalries. I mean, in the games themselves were awesome, and I just thought we're still in a pandemic, and these tournaments went off pretty well.
Yeah, I thought the NCAA did a great job, especially having all the games in one city. So we're talking about Indianapolis for the men's tournament and San Antonio for the women's tournament. So having all those games in one city, having all those teams in one city, all those coaches, all the personnel, and then only having one game canceled due to COVID, I think they did a really good job, first off, hosting the tournaments once they fixed the women's side of things, obviously. Once they fixed the women's side and the facilities, I think they did a good job of hosting. But I also think they did a good job of picking the cities. I think they picked the right cities to be able to have these tournaments and to be able to host them, especially for the men's tournament. Like I said, bringing back that Hoosier mentality, which was awesome, and the excitement to the Hoosier State. But I think even in the women's tournament in San Antonio, where they used for the brackets, like the Alamo and stuff like that, I think that was really cool. And there was a lot of excitement in the women's tournament. And that Stanford and Arizona game for the final was pretty amazing. Cheers to Stanford for winning the women's national title. And I like Arizona's coach, obviously, with the flair that she showed on the sidelines. And I think that was one of those things where, as coaches, we connect so much with our players that we're not really thinking about the cameras. We're just really thinking about where we are in the moment. And that showed it, where she was just excited with her team. And I think that was something as fans that we really got to see, and it got to bring you inside the huddle a little bit, per se. But it was an exciting tournament for both the men and the women's. And yeah, cheers to the NCAA for bringing back the madness and bringing back March Madness to our houses and to America. And we all needed it, especially, like we said, that game in the men's Final Four was really the game we all needed.
Most definitely. And anybody who thinks that the Arizona women's basketball coach made a mistake in what she said in the huddle after they won a Final Four game has never watched sports before in their entire life. Coaches swear, players swear, they get fired up. So leave her alone. Yeah, I mean, I watched more women's college basketball this year than I have in the past. And there's also kind of always been this debate, when UConn was so dominant, is UConn's dominance good for the sport, or is it not good for women's college sports? One side of it is that they're so good that people already know the outcome, or does their dominance give you more eyeballs on the tournament? And I don't think either one makes a difference there necessarily. I actually think when they're dominant, they actually might even bring more eyeballs. But this year's tournament was great, and you had teams that, you saw UConn lose to an Arizona team. It was technically an upset, and UConn's got the player of the year. I mean, Gino Auriemma's been to the tournament how many times? He's been to that Final Four how many times? And they ended up losing, and that was great drama for the tournament. Stanford is a great team. Now, a lot of people, I think, thought that South Carolina was going to win it this year, and that game against Stanford was a really tough one for both teams. And some people were complaining about the refereeing, but it's, in a sport, women's college basketball needs more viewership. So the fact that we're talking about that the refereeing wasn't great means that they're getting more viewership, they're getting more eyeballs, they're getting more interest, which is awesome. And you've seen a lot of coaches come out over the last few days since their national championship game and say, now is the time that women's college sports is really being put on the map because of the games that they had in the NCAA tournament, and they're showing the kind of product that they can bring to basketball fans across the country. So I think that was great. The fact that the men's side only had one game canceled, I mean, it's terrible for VCU. Feel horrible for them. Who knows what would have happened? I mean, imagine if VCU, they played that game and VCU beat Baylor. I mean, we could have a totally different tournament. So, but other than that, canceling one game, I think a lot of people are surprised that that was the only one that was canceled. And, you got to give your hats off to the NCAA. It went off well. And I think the plan is from now on, they're really thinking about having the Sweet 16 and beyond, for the rest of the tournament be in one city. So this year, everything was in the Indianapolis area, whether it was at Lucas Oil Stadium, Indiana and Bloomberg, Butler, Purdue, the Pacers arena. And I think they're going to try to do that from the Sweet 16 on in every single tournament from now on, where they keep it at one city. Some people like it, some people don't. But, we've always talked about, in the past year about how the pandemic has had people get creative. Invention is born out of necessity. So when we've had these things where we've had to change because of the pandemic, some of these things might be changing for the better. We'll see how it works out with the NCAA tournament format. But I just think this year it did go really well, despite some of the hiccups in the very beginning.
I think going forward, if they have from the Sweet 16, to the Elite Eight, Final Four, and championship in one city, I think it would be awesome, because those would be some amazing tickets to get going forward. When we bring all the fans back, it'll bring kind of like a festival-like thing to the tournament, especially from the Sweet 16 on. So I'm all for it, to be honest. And I think it's one of those things where when UConn is dominant in women's basketball, I think it does help. I think it does help women's basketball. And I guess the argument would be like, hey, when Alabama is dominant in men's football, does that help? And I'm pretty sure it does. You know what I mean? It's bringing more eyes. And here's the other thing, too, is it's when they get beat. When they get beat, that people love to see that. You know what I mean? Yep. People love seeing those dominant dynasties get beat. So when Arizona went in there and knocked off UConn, that created all that excitement that people were looking for the tournament. And a lot of people are looking for these dynasties to get toppled, too. So it's just one of those things where I think when you have a dynasty like that, it'll help. But I think they were both great tournaments, and I'm looking forward to next year's tournament. I think it's just going to be better, and hopefully, like you said, with the adjustments that they make going forward, that they'll keep this excitement rolling that they've started here.